Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Pleased to have you with us, joining us today. And thank you for coming to our second in the series of Guidebook Meets, which is really about bringing customer stories to life. And we want to discuss not only their use of Guidebook, but really a bit more about the wider area that they operate in so we can really kind of dig into that. So for those that haven't watched one of our webinars before, I'm Nathan Meyer. I'm the community manager here at Guidebook, and I was once a Guidebook customer a good few years ago. But yeah, I myself have gone through the experience of onboarding with Guidebook, building lots of apps. When I joined, we implemented 100 events across my time as a Guidebook customer, 100 apps that was. So yeah, excited to now be here on the other side and talking to customers and learn a little bit more about their use cases and how they implement and use the product. So today I'm very pleased to have Deric Ford joining us. He plays an integral role at the new school as the Associate Director of Orientation and Transition Experience. So, Deric, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Nathan. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. And to start off, really just want to kind of learn a little bit more about yourself and your role at the new school and how you engage with campus events.
Sure. So I started my career maybe about 10 years ago, and most people in higher education, you don't have a desire to go into higher education initially. It's always this one moment that manifests itself. And I was a RA at the time, and being an RA is fun as a student, but I then identified like maybe this is something I would want to do um, in my professional career. But my background is in marketing. So I really was thinking like, how does marketing and higher education coincide together? And my first opportunity that I had post-college, I worked at a medical school. And at this medical school, I worked in student affairs, more specifically, student leadership, student orientation, things of that variety. And I wanted to take those marketing skills that I learned and bring them to this new space, a space that was often not necessarily given a lot of attention when it comes to internal events hosted by staff members. So at the medical school, I did a whole variety of different things, and I then wanted to look at other opportunities outside of medicine. And I came across the new school where I currently work now, which is a liberal arts institution that is focused on progressive movement. And this really spoke to me because one of the things that we do at the new school is that we challenge the status quo. And that was something that I always resonated with in my previous role about how to move forward in unexpected ways and how the support of not only my leaders but students as well to embrace new opportunities and try new things.
That's amazing. Thank you, yeah, for sharing a little bit of background there. And I'm really interested in, what you said there about challenging the status quo and kind of bringing that back round to, campus events. And I know that you're involved with a few in orientation, especially. How do you see that, playing a role in how you think about campus events and how you engage with students and really think about the students' needs?
Absolutely. And I'm a very reflective person. And post the pandemic, if we're in that space now, one of
I
the
hope we're
things that
post-pandemic.
yeah, yeah, right. One of the things that we see here is that students are looking for, not only students, but people in general are looking for flexibility in formats. So in the pandemic, we were strictly online, and then people were opposed to that. But because of being online for what, 2.5 years, maybe three, people grown to love it either by accident or by choice. So now that we are more in person, some individuals still crave those virtual hybrid opportunities. And we're in the space now that even though that we are in person, we are just having this internal dialogue just as a society about how do we place both of these together in the same space? How do we create a experience that meets all of the student needs or customer needs? I also think due to the pandemic is that there's a heavy emphasis on more community focused, intimate settings. So online, you didn't have that, so to speak, large, community atmosphere. You started to navigate in smaller cohorts. And I think that even in person, we are kind of seeing that same thing as well. And the last point I would say is about like adaptability. So being sure that you are always being adaptable to the need of the audience group.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess with that in mind, then, and that kind of finding a path between in-person, hybrid, catering to a lot of different types of students' needs, how does that change the way in which the new school's mission statement or vision for delivering for students? How's that changed? Have you kind of reassessed what you're trying to achieve in this post-pandemic, post-COVID world, or is it very much still we're sticking to what we want to do, but we just have to find new ways about achieving those goals?
That's a great question. And actually, I had a conversation with my leader yesterday, and this came up because we were strategizing about our guidebook strategy for the fall of 2025. And one of the things that we were talking about is, when do we adapt the strategy? And at the new school, by our name, we are always looking for something new. We're always ready to dive into something different. We're always willing and ready to shift gears. And it's something that my leader said yesterday, was that sometimes we need to settle into a strategy and really assess that strategy before we start making changes, to actually see if this is an effective strategy, or to identify if this is a strategy that needs to be either completely overhauled, or there's certain elements of this strategy that need to be tweaked. So with that in our conversation yesterday, it has led me to think now about having enough data to support your decision making. So for instance, we just rolled out our guidebook app for the fall, this past fall, and I was ready to change it because it was great, but it always could be better. But my leader so eloquently said, let us settle into this strategy and then determine how we move forward. And I think it's having that balance between understanding when to make the change, but also understanding what are some of the more small, low-hanging fruit that could be changed in order to solve maybe some low-hanging fruit problems in that process. But at the new school, we're always committed to creative thinking and how we go about the different processes and systems that we have in place. One of the things that several of our senior leaders have mentioned is the concept of being student-centered. Everything we do at the new school, we really want to focus in on the student and place the student in the experience first. So all of our strategies really hone into that. But I will say, which, there's further talking points about this later, is that sometimes with processes being student-centered, we really need the student to do their part in order to make these strategies effective. And the last thing I would say is part of our approach is having an interdisciplinary approach. So we really try to connect students with different entities, thoughts, systems that are different from their day-to-day. At a liberal arts school, you can imagine, like most institutions, is that there's silos. However, sometimes at a liberal arts institution, the silos run very deep because the art in which they're doing is very different. So we have performance art, then we have visual art. So, and even in that, it still runs very deep as well. So we try to build bridges between these silos to really allow students to understand that there's a whole other world outside of what they do day to day.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm looking forward to, as you mentioned, diving into a few of those subjects over the coming session today. And I did just want to mention to everyone who is joining us, feel free to please share your questions and your thoughts as we discuss some of these challenges and strategies in the chat. We do want you to ask questions and get involved, and we'll take them at the end. And I want to come back to diving into orientation a little bit more. You mentioned there that you wanted to kind of change the strategy, but you're going to kind of sit with it for a little bit longer and just see how that evolves. When you look at orientation and your approach to it, what are your core goals when you're thinking about delivering that event year on year?
Sure. One of our core goals is students feeling connected and having a sense of belonging. And the other core goal is accessibility. So we really focus on ensuring that the things that we do are easily accessible to students. And not only that, what we've seen just due to some of the new forming departments, not only necessarily at our institution, my institution, but just in general in higher education, there's a more of an emphasis on retention and how do we retain students, but not only how do we retain them, but how do we engage with them? How do we convert them from melting to a student? And one of the things that we look at is just like the first 50 days. So within the first 50 days, data tells us that if a student attends 1 or 2 or 3 events, they are more likely to feel connected, and they're less likely to attrit or withdraw. So my office, one of the things that we do is that we do extended programming, something called Norals Discovers. And Norals Discovers is our 6-week long process, our 6-week long extended orientation, where we have some of those interdisciplinary opportunities for students to further engage with our campus community, either socially, academically, emotionally, or spiritually. So I have to highlight a few things in this process. One of my team members is leading an initiative called Fair Fridays. So every Friday, we're having a different type of fair, and the fair has a specific topic in mind. So one of those fairs is related to like community. One is related to career. One is related to health and wellness. So this allows students to meet these individuals that support them in that particular area, which is, I think it's a great idea. And one of the initiatives that I'm leading in this process, just due to the nature of being at a progressive school, is that we're having a workshop in human rights that is a part of our extended orientation experience. So a lot of what we do here at the new school, it's really bridging the gaps, or not necessarily, they're not always gaps, or bridging the experiences that some students may or may not have access to, just because of the silos that they are part of. And all of these initiatives that I spoke about really are at the center of, what we believe in, which is, a sense of belonging, informing students of the resources that are available to them, and allowing them to build their community of peers and supporters from day one.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think anyone that's been to university knows that, it is a special time where finding those people and connecting with like-minded people and people that challenge you in positive ways is such an important part of that. And you mentioned, you have kind of core steps, or you have kind of moments that you would raise the flag if a student isn't engaging, if they're not attending these events, that raises concerns around retention and things like that. Do you have strategies around how you enhance that engagement with the students, or what you do when you see that a student isn't engaging? Like, how would you kind of react in that situation?
So that's a good question. And currently right now, we have several offices that are forming to kind of serve as our guiding star for retention. And some of the things that we're doing as well is that we're looking at our systems that we have in place and identifying how we can leverage those systems in a way to track student data more effectively. And with that, I've been in conversations about different systems that we use, or different systems that we could use to start to track student engagement throughout orientation, but and beyond. So at this current moment, no specific strategies about how we are doing it, but more or less about laying the foundation in which we will be able to build on those strategies. Specifically in my area in student success, we just hired a associate provost or assistant provost, someone very important like that, to lead our efforts in retention and student success. And then we have a director of retention in my space in student success that doesn't sit at the university level, but sits in our division. So we're have a better opportunity to engage with that person and identify ways to build those retention strategies.
Yeah, amazing. And I want to kind of bring in, the notion of technology and the role that it can play in supporting these strategies. And then also specifically, what brought you to think about utilizing a mobile platform for orientation? And has that changed the way in which you strategize or implement any of the components of orientation that you bring together?
Sure. I'm all about leveraging technology. Technology can be our friend when it is used appropriately. And I am a big component of that. One reason is just due to the ease of access to doing certain things and also the time saved. Higher education is professional specifically, but any other professional that does event management, you're doing a lot of different things. And having technology to do the heavy lifting for you, it's always, in my opinion, worth it if it aligns correctly for you. But also the use of a mobile platform is really at the heart of understanding the audience that we are welcoming into the school. And that audience is Gen Alpha. Is that them, or Gen Z?
Yeah, I always get stuck on when we transition. I'm not sure if we're quite at Gen Alpha at university yet, or we're just about there. But yeah, it's different. The generation, is changing quite a lot.
Exactly. And I also think something else that happens often, or things that that occur that we don't think about, is that K through 12 education has harnessed technology and has trained these students, or these students to use technology in certain ways. And I think that with the work that they're doing there, it makes a lot of sense to leverage that and to give them a similar experience. Is that when you start to deviate what the experience that people know, that's where people get lost. So the leveraging of a mobile app helps bridge that gap between something that they were similarly doing, let's say in high school, and what the experience now will be for them here in college.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to kind of keep that understanding of technology and the role it plays going. And for you specifically, what did using Guidebook allow you to achieve with orientation? What does Guidebook allow you to do in the process of creating orientation? And what would you recommend to others who are using the product or thinking about using the product for their next campus event?
Sure. And sure. We use a resource called Splash, and very recently Guidebook and Splash have a partnership together. And so we use Splash for all of our orientation schedule programming. But what happened with Splash is that Splash is a great resource if you are predominantly doing, let's say, one or two events. However, at the new school, we have 5 institutions within the umbrella, and we have, let's say, 3 of those institutions that welcome first-year students. And one of the goals from our provost's office is to create a streamlined experience for our students, but also create experiences that are equitable. So what that means for our office, my office, and transition experiences, is that we want to ensure that there is equity in how we share information and the information that we share. And we want to ensure that the aesthetic is all the same. So with Splash, it was difficult to always achieve that because Splash is a very similar to Eventbrite. It is a page where you can modify text, backgrounds, things of that nature. So to create that equitable experience, it's quite challenging to do in a space that is very hands-on. For Guidebook is hands-on, but it is hands-on in a different way. It really streamlines the process and it creates one singular process for students. And not only that, with Splash, we were not able to specifically curate content and schedules that were specific to a user. So, for Guidebook, I can, based on the fall here, we had roughly maybe about, I don't have my notes up right now, but we probably had around maybe between 30 to 40 different schedules that each represented a different type of student. So when you take that 30 to 40 different schedules and you try to input that into a program like Splash, you can see the complexities there, but you can see how students can get lost. One of the things that why we really wanted Guidebook is the personalization, where a student can log into the app and they could see a custom schedule that was personalized for them. That was very important to us at the new school as we look to streamline the process and create equitable experiences.
And personalization, I think, a lot of people talk about it, and, it's really key to streamlining the experience, as you mentioned there. But how do you feel, when students, have you noticed a change in how that had an impact on students engaging with events specifically and orientation? Did you kind of compare that to previous years where maybe before Guidebook it was harder to deliver a more personalized experience? Like, how was that feedback and engagement from the students with that level of personalization?
I think that, and I can speak to this because it's not an observation that I have had. It is observation that several of my peers and colleagues at the institution have shared, is that students feel more informed about their experience. And when I say informed, they feel as if they know where they know what they need to do. They know what's expected of them. And I think that is a great departure from our previous experience, is that students would show up and they would just be there and they have not taken a real ownership in their part in the process. But with this mobile app, with our app, which we call Norwell Compass, it has really empowered students to take responsibility for themselves in this process. But more specifically, students have only asked one question as it relates to their expectations for orientation. Is that students would say, I'm supposed to be at my welcome session in room 301. Where is room 301? That to me is a great departure from, I don't know where I need to be and I don't know what's going on. So I can say, based on conversation with my colleagues and peers, but also just observation looking at the data, that students feel more connected and are taking more ownership in their part in this process.
That's amazing. And you mentioned earlier, and I want to come back to that, you track students' engagement. I think it was 3 events, that if they attend 3 events, retention, statistically goes up. Have you found that increasing the level of personalization does help students attend more events?
And that's a great question, Nathan. And this is something that my team is taking back now. And this is kind of goes down to something that we'll talk about, is learning curves. One of the things that we identified is that personalization is great for us. We feel accomplished by delivering this optimal experience for you. However, I do think that this is where you have to know your audience. Our audience at the new school, they are deeply committed to community and they're committed to each other. And I say that specifically because even though that they had a custom schedule, they in essence wanted to understand what everyone else was doing before they could accept what they should be doing, if that tracks. So what we saw is that the personalization worked, but they wanted confirmation from us that their schedule was correct because their peer had something different. Previously, all of the schedules were online and students can see everything. And I think that gave them more confidence and assurance. So where we are now is thinking, is that what I described, is that related to communicating the students? Is it just a communication thing? Or is it about instilling confidence in who they are as a student, for them to have the peace of mind to know that this schedule is specific to my needs. So that was an interesting departure from the high level of personalization that we did in the fall.
And you talked earlier about students have a role to play in this, right? Has a, you can run all the events and you can create the great experience, but students need to, meaningfully participate. And that, with personalization and that curiosity around others are doing it, there are ways, obviously, I think within Guidebook, you can have personalization and still demonstrate the bigger picture. Can students, if they see what other students are up to or attending or what's in their schedule, are they able to engage with those programs as well as their personalized schedule if they want to? Is that something you can incentivize, or is it very much, we need to keep students exactly where they are, the experience we're designing for them? How does that kind of play out? And will you look to try and find a blend of both next year?
So this was the strategy that me and my leader were talking about, is that do we do a departure from the high level personalization, and to create something in the middle? And so a part of having the high level of personalization is surrounded to the different types of degree programs that we have. Because we have 5 institutions in this institution, schools in this institution, sometimes the degree programs overlap. So you could be getting a BA, a Bachelor's of Arts, and 2 or 3 colleges. So just having the information out there could become confusing to students, because some students, part of it is the students, but also the other part of it too is that some of our institutions, like other institutions, incoming students are undeclared. And because you're undeclared, that means you have no major. So what this means is that the process of how we would go about providing content to you from the premise of what your degree program is wouldn't be applicable in this instance because you're undeclared. So there are different nuances like that within my ecosystem that would make having a middle option a little bit more difficult. However, what I will say is that the high level of personalization, it worked. It's effective. I just think that it requires more TLC. And I think that is what my leader and I discussed yesterday, and how we can bring that TLC to our experience in fall 2025.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think that, it feels exciting. It's rather than a whole new strategy, it's a slight iteration and evolve the current one. And I think that will ultimately play out. And keen to kind of come back to Guidebook in all of this. And obviously personalization has been a big part of how you've engaged with the app. But what else do you feel within using Guidebook, especially from student engagement, student experience? What else have you kind of built or been able to generate through utilizing the mobile app?
Sure. And one of my favorite features, is a gated list. And a gated list allows you to deliver content to certain audiences within the mobile app. And one of the ways that we do that is that we deliver custom welcome messages for different audience groups. So we have a welcome message at the college level by the dean. And then we have welcome messages for different types of affinity or special interest groups. So that could be first generation, international, transfer, veterans. It could be a multitude of different groups, but that's how we use it with first gen, international, veterans, and a few others. So they have a custom message there that those students that have an indicator in the app will see that specific message. And I think that creates the additional touches of that personalization. It shows intentional effort and intentional contact that we as institution are making with that student to honor and to celebrate some of the special populations that they are a part of, and connecting them to the resources that are available to them day one, and even before they arrive at the institution. So that's one of my favorite things there. And I would say some of the other features about enhancing the personalization is that one of the things that we tried out for the first time is that we did some like a conference style session. So in essence, we sent out a call to all the offices at my institution, and we invited them to attend this conference style session from 2 to 5. And during this session, students had the opportunity to pick what offices they wanted to hear from. So it was financial aid, student accounts, sustainability, our equipment center. We had student health and student health. Then we had student support and advocacy. So we really wanted to do that for a couple of reasons. One is that we wanted to connect students with those resources. We wanted to give students options, but more importantly, we wanted to connect students with each other, and some low hanging fruit ways. Because if you're going to a certain session, and obviously you have a desire or a need in it, and you see others there, you're more likely to connect with people when you have identified you guys share some type of interest or have some type of concern that you're trying to work through. So that was something great that we utilized with the app. And we placed all of those we placed all of those conference style sessions in a track. And based on the track, students were able to add those to their schedules, in addition to the personalized schedules that we already created for them.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it feels like, you've invested a lot of, time and energy into building out your app and really thinking about the end user and the student and, what they can get from it. And I think that's, for people who maybe are doing similar things or haven't yet and, might be thinking about a gated list now. How much time does it take? Like, how easy is it to bring some of this stuff together? What kind of commitment are we talking about when you're looking at your orientation app?
That's a good question. Hmm. Hmm. I can't say. I've
No,
had a
that's
lot of
fair.
nights.
Are you
Uh,
building it yourself?
I am. I
Yeah.
have built it myself. I think that if you approach this from a multifaceted perspective, so if you have a few people that are supporting this app in different ways, so maybe someone from a technical perspective, and then maybe someone from a content perspective, and then maybe someone from a user experience or design perspective.
Mm,
I think that would be greatly beneficial. The biggest the biggest chunk of time for me, and this was because of the high level personalization, was the
mm.
content. It was getting the sessions in there. It was meeting with all of the individuals that had sessions to understand what students needed to be at this session to build those schedules out. So that took the most time if you're looking for a experience that has a high level of personalization.
Mm,
If you're looking for a standard experience where you just upload the sessions, the content portion of it won't necessarily be as significant at all.
yeah.
So the content portion is based on the level of personalization that you want. And obviously the the user experience portion of it, UI and UX and design, that's just based on aesthetic.
Mm.
And at my institution, the New School, where we are creative and innovative, and we are artsy and all those things. So it took me a long time because
Yeah.
I wanted to get it right. I wanted certain colors. I wanted it to match our vision and our aesthetic and our ethos. So it just really depends on what what your aims are.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is that this is not a um this is not a marathon. It's more of a slow trek,
Yeah.
and you do a little bit over time, and then till it gets to a place where it is done.
Mm.
If one of the pieces of advice that I can say about this is that we launched our experience in the spring, so we had a opportunity to build just a bare bones, and just to test what the core looked like, and then we were able to go back and do enhancements. I think that worked out a lot better than trying to launch this in the fall, where typically enrollments are higher, uh, more things are happening in your office when it comes to just delivering orientation. So we
Mm.
built it in the for the launch of the spring, and that was helpful for our efforts.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And with that in mind, I know you're a relatively new user of Guidebook. Is there any kind of key learning curves that you feel that you would share with others, or something that you really, stood out that as you go to build your app next year, that you'll be like, okay, I've learned, I found a better way to do something?
Sure. Um, this is just a lesson learned from our fall 2024 experience. So with the high level of personalization that we employed, we created custom schedules, and every
Mm.
student had an assigned schedule to them. However, just due to a lot of nuances of this particular focus in orientation, where we have a rolling admissions at some institutions where students are continuously coming in. So we found ourselves in a space where some students didn't have assigned schedules just due to the pipeline of admissions. And then when we added those schedules to the students' schedule, when we assigned the student a schedule physically in person, day one orientation, and when we published that schedule, what we noticed is that when we hit publish, it refreshed everyone's schedule. So there was for instance, not for instance, literally every 5 minutes or so, students' schedules were disappearing because the app was refreshing. And what happened was that students would be like, oh, my schedule was here 5 minutes ago, but now it's not. So then we will assign them another schedule. And then another student came up, then we would assign them another schedule. And then it was maybe about like 30 minutes into this, I said, because I was working the help desk, I said, I know that these students have schedules. So
Mm.
what on the back end is happening? And that's when we identified that when we published a schedule, it was a whole system refresh where everyone's schedule was updated or refreshed. So that really taught us that we probably need to mitigate how we go about assigning schedules. And we probably should refrain from doing a system refresh at peak moments in our
Mm.
experience, because it impacts and interrupts the user experience. So that probably was our key lesson that we learned from the fall.
Yeah, no, that's a really useful bit to share. I've had an interesting question come in
Mhm.
about notifications on Guidebook, and I think that is a really important part of communication and how we engage with students. And you've talked a lot about personalization, but
Mhm.
yeah, how did you interact with notifications, and when do you feel like they were better used, or times in which they were more effective? Yeah, I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Sure. And one of the good things about Guidebook is that you're able to create groups. So when you go to upload your users into Guidebook, I'm not a coder, but I was for Guidebook. So I was tagging the students with all these different types of like attributes, such as like undergrad, grad, first gen, international students, veteran, all of these different things. So what you're able to do in notifications, either with in-app notifications or push notifications, you're able to send targeted communications to certain audiences. So I just want to lay the foundation for that. But overall, I try to use notifications in terms of importance. Is this critical? Like, is this mission critical for our aim here, or is this something that is a FYI? So, for instance, we all get those emails in our inbox that are just like FYI, you know. So I created notifications. That's how I frame notifications. It's just that what is more of an FYI and what is more mission critical. So we use push notifications predominantly at the start and end of the day. So like it's day one of orientation, you know, check your schedules. And then we ended on like, we are actually, I take that back. We had an intro and an exit. And then if we had any type of flagship activity, we highlighted that. So some of our flagship activities were, we did a first year social. So we highlighted that. And some other things. So that's how we used in-app notifications. But for the push notifications, it's really beneficial. For instance, if there is some of our colleges that indicated that they were having like, and their numbers were low for some of their sessions. So that they just sent me a G chat and I was able to send a push notification to those students and say, hey, your session is starting now. You should be there. Something of that nature. So it really just depends on what your aim is for the notifications. But however, I will say is that the how and who to target for these notifications is really robust within the app.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with a lot of the sentiment there. I think push notifications are a really effective way to communicate with your attendees and your audience, but you want to make sure that you're keeping the importance of the push notification there by not diluting how many you send or the frequency of them. So I think absolutely use them to drive session attendance. That's such a great example of, you know, students might have forgot, they might not know they need to be there at that point in time, and you can just give them that notification. You can also target them, which means that you're not blanket notifying everyone, which stops you from oversending, let's say. But also, you know, if there's big updates on campus, if there's big updates to the event or changes, anything that you need to, like you say, is a real moment in time piece of information that end users need. I also think from a organizer's standpoint, I think push notifications are great when you're thinking about feedback from students. You know, if you've got forms that you want them to fill in or to engage with, you can really use push notifications to highlight and direct them straight to that part of the app, and tag that part of the app into the push notification to simplify and remove any friction that there may be. So I think that's just another a great way for anyone trying to think of their push notification strategy and their communication strategy. I know we're up on time. I just want to say if anyone else does have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A or the chat. I'd also just like to, Deric, kind of last thoughts, any advice you might give for institutions looking to use technology more widely, or implement mobile apps more prominently across their campus. Like, any advice you would have for people on the webinar?
Sure. One of the things I would say is probably mission critical is know your audience, and have an understanding of how your audience will respond to Guidebook, like your app or any other app or experience. I also would say is that ensuring that you are building user-friendly processes. And one of the things that specific to the new school is that, and other institutions, just society is that we get inundated with different user experiences and user interfaces where some of them are not, all of them are not made the same, meaning that some are better than others. And I think that it's important to ensure that whatever app, whatever mobile tech software you're using, that it is user friendly and it does not become more of a detriment for your audience to use. And also, if you can help it, it should not necessarily add to the other litany of mobile apps that a person or a student has to engage with, because we are in the tech space, and sometimes there's duplications in efforts with some of the apps. So it's ensuring that you are being mindful of your audience and a friendly user experience, and even potentially leveraging apps or processes internally, instead of introducing something new if it can meet your needs.
Definitely. I think that that consideration of how people engage with the app and the design, and I think for us at Guidebook, that's been something that's been front and center since 2011. It's really thinking about how's the look and feel of it, how can people engage with it, does it make sense, is it easy to use? And I think that's a really important point, and something that we always stress, even now as we continue to develop features, the app and everything else. Event marketing website that we've just launched is really that design-led approach, and really thinking about how end users engage with it. We've just had another good question come in that I wanted to ask you, Deric,
Sure.
around how are you pushing students to download the app pre-event? Are you using email, what's the best ways you found to increase adoption or to get students engaging to download?
Sure, and this is a great question. So we are a victim. I'm a victim of my own words. So our admission office, they use an app, an experience called ZME. And this is an experience where students gather before they get handed over to my office. So in essence, we had students already in a central place. So we had our student staff, I almost said infiltrate. We're not infiltrating. They simply joined ZME, and they said, hey, we're launching our app and over here, so come and join us over here. So that was one way. The other way is that we have a summer experience called Neural Transitions, which is a Canvas course that students go through. So we have also posted it there as well. We sent out targeted communications as well. However, I don't like to I don't like to frame it this way. However, but it is the truth of the matter. Without downloading Guidebook or our app Neural Compass, a student cannot access their schedule. So it's for us, because we are utilizing that high level personalization where orientation lives in this app, and you have to download it and log in to access your schedule. That was enough motivator for most to download it and to adopt it. I would say if you are looking to have them adopt this app without a level of personalization that requires them to like log in, so to speak, as if I think that it could be more challenging to do so. However, one of the things that I want to shout out Guidebook for is that they've launched a new feature, a few features. One feature specifically is that they launched a feature called the Leadership. So the Leadership Board is a way to gamify certain experiences in the app. So basically what you could do is that you could gamify the experience to say that whoever downloads the app and completes this in-app survey by this date, you'll get rewarded, like, I don't know, 1,000 points. And then based on that, you look on the back end, and then you assign some type of reward or incentivization for those users. I will say that adoption is very difficult, especially with a mobile app, because individuals already have a lot of apps on their phone. And some individuals have said in passing is that, like, what is this app for? Like, how long do I have to download this app? So from the very beginning, we saw a few signs of that.
Mm. Yeah, no, definitely. I think there are challenges to adoption, and it's something that we work with people on all the time here at Guidebook, especially our, you know, client success managers and our support team. And I think from us, my advice would always be make sure you're launching your app with a good amount of time before you need people to be at the event, because you are going to, like most things in life these days, you're going to need to over communicate. You're going to have to send multiple emails or however you communicate with your students most effectively. And you need the time and the bandwidth to be able to do that. So if you're trying to scramble the week before the event and get your adoption numbers up, it's going to really have an impact on how successful that is. But if you're able to plan ahead and give yourself 2, 3, 4 weeks of essentially app marketing time to engage students and to send enough communication. I'd also say that when you're inviting people to the app, you need to really explain to them what are the key features, like have something there that they can't get somewhere else, whether that is their schedule, whether that is other parts of the orientation experience or campus event experience that you're creating, but have some level of exclusivity that they need to download the app to receive that. And because that really does allow people to come in, it shows the value of it and it will increase your adoption. And then lastly, as you mentioned, leaderboard is a new feature. It is a great way to build habits. I mean, that is kind of what gamification is. It's fun, it's engaging, it gets people using the app. We've seen incredible statistics around not everything in the app is gamified, but when people utilize gamification, actually the areas that aren't gamified, the statistics and the data there go up because people are spending more time in the app. They then want to explore it. They see the value. They get excited. They're sharing pictures, engaging with schedules, adding to their schedule, whatever that may be. But also then they become curious around, like, okay, I need to read the gated list. I need to read, all of the other resources and information that people have spent a lot of time putting in there. So I think there are a few different ways. But for me, it's just like time and being able to communicate effectively and have something in the app that is really important, but people can't get elsewhere. And that will help increase adoption. I don't think we have any other questions. I've not seen any others come in. So with that, we are up on time. But Deric, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today, for taking the time out to share your kind of experience with campus events, orientation, guidebook, and everything else in between. I hope everyone has found it useful and valuable, and we really appreciate you joining us today. And yeah, thank you so much, Deric.
No, I was happy to spend this time with you, Nathan.
Great. Well, I look forward to catching up soon, and to everyone else, we'll speak soon and look forward to seeing you on the next Guidebook Meets in our series. So take care, everyone, and goodbye.